Hey guys, Kevin, it's me, another movie for guys. Now, this movie we're reviewing, this by far was one of my most anticipated movies for the rest of the year. I could not wait to see this movie. I know it came out, it's September 18th. I wanted to see it last week, didn't get a chance to, but I told myself I am definitely going to see it this week, and I finally did, and that movie is Everest. Everest, as I said, was one of the movies I was looking forward to the most for the rest of this year. Just from the trailer, this movie looked terrifying, it looked very thrilling, and looked like one of the most, suspenseful movies of the year, definitely. I really couldn't wait to see how this was going to play out. I started to hear okay reviews about it, but I still went into this movie very excited, and I came out really satisfied. Overall, I really enjoyed Everest. I thought that this was a very, very good movie. It's not perfect. It does have a few problems here and there, but for the most part, I thought this was a really great movie, and especially on a movie that deals with a disaster, definitely better than a lot of definitely better than it could have been. Definitely, I will definitely say that, and I definitely recommend you guys go see it. And I'll get into that. Now, the plot to Everest is really simple. It's probably one of the most simple plots you'll see. Basically, the plot is there are two expedition groups. One is led by Scott Fisher, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and the other is led by Rob Hall, and played by Jason Clarke. And they pretty much are just, climbing this mountain because they want to climb the mountain, and they don't really think anything of it. But then when a storm approaches, they have to do whatever they can to get out of there, stay safe, and basically not die. That's what they have to do. They have to try to not die, and that basically is the plot of Everest. And I think right away, just from that plot, it's very thrilling, and it really shows you can have the most simple plot and have it be very, very suspenseful, and that's exactly what this movie is. It's very suspenseful. But like I said, this is definitely better than your typical disaster movie because this was actually based on a true story, and you can definitely tell by the acting in this movie, which everyone really does a fantastic job in this movie. There isn't a single bad performance in this movie, really. I don't think there is, at least. And Jason Clarke, though, is the main star of this movie as Rob Hall, who the only other movie that I've seen him in is Terminator Genisys as John Connor. Not a very good introduction to him, but he did a very good job in this movie, definitely. I really like the character of Rob Hall, the way he basically just wanted to climb Mount Everest, and this was his dream, and that he really wanted to do this, and it was kind of like his last adventure before his wife has this baby, because his wife is expecting a baby, and it kind of seemed like this was like his last adventure before he is a father. That's kind of what it seemed like to me, which I thought was really interesting. And he does a really, really great job overall. You really see the leadership skills in him, but you're also terrified for his survival, especially towards the third half of this movie. Oh my god, I had no idea what was going to happen with him, and he really did a fantastic job, I have to say. And definitely, I don't know if he portrayed the actor, the character of Rob Hall, the real Rob Hall spot on, but he definitely did a very good job for what I saw, that is. Josh Brolin, as well as Beck, did a very good job in this movie. You care about him just as much as Rob. You want him to survive just as much as Rob. And just like Rob, he also has a family life. And I like the way that these characters actually have, daily lives. They have things going on in their lives. They have, they're married. They have things going on. I thought definitely he did a very good job. You really cared about him. There's one scene toward the end of the movie where he basically, his family is basically the thing that keeps him alive. I mean, there's a scene toward the end of the movie where he's picturing his family, and you're not sure if he's gonna die or not. Just amazing, honestly. That scene in general kind of felt like an Oscar-worthy performance. I mean, I don't know if this movie's gonna get some Oscars, but he was fantastic in this movie. Josh Brolin was amazing, and he definitely did a very good job. My only real problem in terms of acting is Jake Gyllenhaal, which you guys are like, what? Jake Gyllenhaal's a problem? I'll explain why. Jake Gyllenhaal, of course, is one of the best actors working today. There's no doubt about it, definitely. No doubt about it that Jake Gyllenhaal is one of the best actors working today. You can really give him any movie, especially after Nightcrawler. But the problem is Jake Gyllenhaal is one of the three leads in this movie, but as a character, he is extremely underused and extremely miscasted, I think, at least. Don't get me wrong, Jake Gyllenhaal is obviously great in this movie and does a great job as Scott Fisher. if you're expecting Nightcrawler or enemy-worthy acting, you're gonna be severely disappointed with this movie, because Jake Gyllenhaal really didn't have too much to do as a character in this movie. I thought the character Scott Fisher was pretty one-note and really didn't have much to do. And like I said, while Gyllenhaal does a good job with the material he has, he really doesn't have much to work with here, and it was kind of disappointing to see him, get these really great roles and then do something like this. It just seemed like, when you have people like Jason Clarke, Josh Brolin, and then you have Jake Gyllenhaal is obviously the one that people are going to talk about the most and the one that people want to find out the most about. So when he's not as good, it kind of brings the movie down a bit. And don't go into the movie thinking that this is going to be another Nightcrawler, because it's not. He does a good job of what he has, but I just felt the character of Scott Fisher was very underused. Could have had a lot more, and especially with someone like Gyllenhaal, you would think they would give him more to do, but they didn't, and unfortunately, he's the most underused character in the movie. However, everyone else is great. John Hawkes is really good. Sam Worthington is surprisingly very, very good in this movie. I really like the character, Emily Watson's character of Helen, the way she's just trying to save all these men no matter what happens and just get them all safe, because obviously she cares about their safety. Keira Knightley was amazing in this movie. There's one scene where she breaks down. There were people in my theater crying over this scene. I mean, she did an amazing job, and I've said before, Keira Knightley is probably one of the best actors working today. She does a fantastic job in this movie, as does Robin Wright. I thought Robin Wright was very good as well. Everyone really did a great job. I don't think there was a single bad actor in this movie, and even though, like I said, Jake Gyllenhaal is underused, I think everyone still did a very, very good job. The directing here by Balthazar Kormaker is very, very good. I don't know if he actually, did his research. It seemed like he did his research, though, with this disaster, because it seemed like a pretty realistic depiction of what actually happened. The way he depicts it in this movie, he doesn't depict this as something big, which I was actually happy about. He doesn't depict it as something where it's like, oh, this was a huge disaster. No, he depicts it as just guys going on a mission to climb Mount Everest, and everything's going well until this storm happens. And that's something that I thought was very well directed. And once that storm happens, there is constant tension throughout this movie. You're gripping your seat. The suspense is there, and Balthazar Kormaker really directed this very, very well, and I have to say the directing was very spot on in that regard, and I was definitely a fan of the directing in terms of suspense, and he really knew how to handle suspense very well. I mean, something I really liked is that the movie never really threw too much at you at once. Like, this kind of seems like one of those movies, you know those disaster movies, like, for example, San Andreas. I hate to go back to that. Nobody really remembers it, but back in, San Andreas, one of the disaster movies this year, kind of threw too much at you at once. This movie never did that. It kind of was like building up to more and more and more as the movie went on, and I thought they did a very good job with that, and I was definitely happy with that. The writing as well, I thought was very good to this movie. While there were some characters that were a bit underused, I thought the writing overall was really, really great. You really see these guys as just guys climbing a mountain and them wanting to succeed this mission, and how even though people are telling them, oh, this is not safe, you should not do this, they do it anyway because they have that determination in them, and I definitely really love seeing that. Their survival skills as well is very, very good. But the emotion of this movie is something that I really wasn't expecting. This movie is very, very emotional. Probably one of the most emotional movies I've seen so far this year. And you probably will tear up in at least one scene, especially toward the end of this movie. Very, very sad, and I thought they did a very good job with the writing. You definitely care about their safety, and this is definitely one of those movies where you really put yourself into the position of these men. You really think, what would I do if I was in their situation? I kept thinking about that throughout the movie. What would I do if I climbed Mount Everest? Now, this movie, let me say, never makes you want to climb a mountain. Like, never climb a mountain after this movie. If you watch this movie, you want to climb a mountain, what the hell are you doing? Like, seriously, why are you doing that? But I think they did a very good job with the writing. I was definitely impressed with it, and it could have been really, could have been really generic directing, just like typical disaster movie directing, but it really wasn't at all. I was a huge fan of the directing. They did a very good job with it, and it was very, very spot on, definitely. I was a very big fan of the directing. The cinematography. Now, I went into this movie expecting A-class cinematography. I was expecting the cinematography to be some of the best of the year, and it really is probably the best some of the best cinematography I've seen this year. Not the best, but some of the best by far. You have to see this movie in IMAX, though, okay? I'm going to tell you this right now. You will not enjoy this movie as much if you don't see it in IMAX. If you see this movie in IMAX, this will be one of the most suspenseful, thrilling IMAX films you have ever seen. To me, I was on the edge of my seat so much throughout this movie, and it was so loud and so realistic. And the sets, while they were green screen, they looked so real, and it looked like they actually filmed on this mountain. It looked like you were right there with them, and that's something they did a very good job with. They really made it seem like you were just standing on that mountain looking at these mountain climbers and and seeing them struggle with getting up and things like that. And I thought they did a very good job with that. Gorgeous cinematography throughout the movie. Every shot. This is one of those movies where have the sound off. Every shot looks amazing. It was just incredible to watch, and something I really loved with the cinematography, though, is that they don't choose to focus on the disaster. They focus more on the emotional trauma that these men are going through, and I think that made the cinematography even more effective, because we don't just see it as cinematography. We see it as the main conflict in this movie. The thing that makes these men, their biggest fear, obviously, was a storm happening. You guys know in the trailer the line, it hurts, it's dangerous, it divides families. Obviously, they're very worried that that is going to happen to them, and I'm not going to spoil what ends up happening to them in this movie, but they did a very good job with making the cinematography not the biggest thing in this movie. It is a big deal, like they do make the cinematography feel big, but it doesn't feel big in the sense of, oh, look, disaster movie and explosions and things like that. And that's something I thought was very well done. Something else I really enjoy about this movie is what actually causes the disaster. What caused the disaster is something as simple as a storm starts. It's that simple, and that's something I really liked. It doesn't have to be something big. It can be something as small as a storm will start, and that can happen. You can climb a mountain and then a storm will start. You can't control when that's going to happen, and I thought they did a very good job with that, and it really kept us invested in the story, definitely. The score, I thought, was really, really good. Nothing amazing, but I thought the score was really powerful at times and really worked in many, many scenes, and I definitely really loved that. And the editing as well. This movie is very slow-paced. It takes about, I'd say, like an hour and a half for the storm to actually happen, and I really enjoyed that because we're seeing the journey of these men. They're not prepared for what's going to come, and we know as an audience what's going to happen because, of course, we saw the trailer, but they don't know what's going to come, and they did a very good job with that, definitely. And you actually forget that this storm happens. I was surprised, but there was a point in the movie where I'm like, oh yeah, a storm's going to happen. You forget it, and when they first climb the mountain, you're gripping your seat. You don't know what's going to happen. But then there's a certain point where you kind of forget that the storm is going to happen, and when the storm does happen, it's a lot more surprising. And I didn't expect that, but that's something I thought they did very well, and I definitely really enjoyed, I have to say. I really, really like seeing that. Also, if you want to be very affected by this movie, don't look up anything that happened, please. Don't look up anything about the disaster, because I went into this movie not really knowing anything about what happened, and I'm very happy I did that. I'm going to do the same thing with The Walk, which it is going to be very hard for The Walk to top this. I don't know if it can, but we'll have to see. But if you want to really be affected by the story of these men and, what they went through and the struggle and what happened to them, definitely don't look up anything, because the ending to this movie, in my opinion, is one of the most emotional, just sad endings I've seen. The Visit was one of the most emotionally satisfying. This is one of just the saddest endings I've seen all year. It doesn't get sadder than the ending in this movie. Well, there have been sad endings here and there, but I don't think there are going to be endings as sad as the one in this movie. I didn't expect the movie to end as sad as it did. It ends in a very sad way, and it didn't try to sugarcoat things. Like, the end of this movie, they tell you really what happened. They show you stuff that you probably don't want to see, but is important to see, and I was very impressed by the way they did that. A lot of movies nowadays, with biopics, they try to sugarcoat things. They try to make it seem like, oh, this isn't as big as a deal, but no, they didn't sugarcoat anything this movie. They told you the story. They said, hey, here's what happened, here's the outcome, and they didn't try to change anything, and I was a big fan of that. I was very happy that they did that, and that's something that I thought was really interesting. However, the final tagline, the final thing where they say, oh, here's what happened after, what you saw in the movie, it'll make you never want to climb Mount Everest. Let me just say that. I'm not going to tell you what they say, but let's just say the final, title card, whatever you call it, the final tagline at the end of the movie, you're not going to want, if you read it, you're probably never going to want to climb Mount Everest in your life. But overall, guys, Everest is a very enthralling, intense, suspenseful journey. It could have been a bit better than it was. I do feel, like I said, Jake Gyllenhaal's character was a bit underused. But overall, I still really did love Everest. I don't think it's, Oscar worthy. I don't. I do feel it could have been a little bit more character-driven, but overall, I still really loved Everest for the most part, and I'm going to give Everest a 4.5 out of 5, or an A-. I really, really loved this movie, I have to say. Definitely, though, like I said, watching it in IMAX will be a lot more effective if you do. But that's basically my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie. You have seen it. A lot of people, surprisingly, haven't been reviewing this movie. And I definitely recommend you do, because it's a great movie. And it's going to be hard to see if The Walk can top it. But maybe it can. We'll have to see. But that's basically my review. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of Fear the Walking Dead. And I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.